Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to get started in just a moment here. Welcome, everybody. My name is Michael Allen. I will be the host this evening. Give us all a moment as we're just going to go through some quick agenda here for everybody. We're going to start out with some introductions, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to give an overview of the LWRP and what the project is about, what this whole effort is about, and why it's important for us to do. And then go through where we are today in the process, as well as review some of the survey results of the online survey, which we conducted last fall. And then we'd like to get into sort of revealing some of the initial concept and ideas that we've put together based on the input we got from the survey, work with the Waterfront Advisory Committee, and prior planning studies. And so then we'll outline the next steps of how everyone can participate in this process, and then go into a Q&A period where we can have a little bit more of a discussion and open things up a little bit from there. So without further ado, feel free to use the Q&A feature that's at the bottom of your screen. If you haven't already seen that, you can submit a sort of a written question at any time during the presentation. And we'll try and maybe save those questions toward the end when people have more time to answer them. And at the end also, when we get to that point, you can also use the raise hand feature, which is also at the bottom of your screen. If you'd like to have the opportunity to speak up, let me know, raise your hand, and I'll give you the opportunity to speak. And then we'll get started. Joining us here tonight, we have representatives from the town of Cortland, as well as the village of Buchanan, and members of the Waterfront Advisory Committee who have been helping us on this project as we go through, as well as members of the consulting team from BHAN Planning and Design, BFJ Planning, and CSA Group Engineering. And so with that, I believe, my name is Michael Allen, and I believe Supervisor would like to maybe say a few words to welcome everybody tonight, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. It would be my pleasure. Thank you. Everybody can hear me? Okay,
Yes.
good. All right, so first of all, I want to welcome everybody to our first public information meeting on the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program, LWRP. We've been talking about doing an LWRP for several years, and I'm so delighted that we are partnering with our good friends from the Village of Buchanan, Mayor Teresa Knickerbocker, and the trustees, the village administrator, and the residents who are participating in this study from the Village of Buchanan. So thank you, Teresa. Thank you, everybody from Buchanan. We partner on so many other things, and this is yet one more important endeavor. And then from the town of Cortland, I want to thank my colleague on the town board, Councilman Frank Farrell. He is a liaison from our town board for the LWRP. And our other town board members, of course, are very supportive. Richard Becker, Jim Creighton, and Deb Carter. And then we have our staff. Chris Keogh is our principal planner. We have Michelle Robbins in our planning department, and Rosemary Boyle Lasher also. Also, thank you to the residents from our town who have volunteered, that's the working word, to participate in this study. Jeff Rothfeder, he's also on our planning board, Amy Rosenberg and Naomi Woodard. So thank you to all of you for joining in this important project. Chris, Frank, and staff have been apprising myself and the town board members over the last several months of this study about the progress. And LWRP is a large undertaking, and our consultants have been doing a very good job. And we thank them for being part of this journey also. The town of Cortland and the village of Buchanan are two lovely communities We have many properties that we're very proud of. And so this study can only enhance what we already have, in my opinion. So tonight, our consultants and staff will map out the study areas, explain what an LWRP is to anybody from the public who's not really sure about it, and how it can be helpful to our two communities. One last thank you, of course, it's important, is for the New York State grant that we both received jointly for Cortland and Buchanan LWRP from the Secretary of State's office, New York State Secretary of State. And the amount was very impressive, $250,000. That is helping us to cover the cost of our excellent consultants and some of the other items that go into an LWRP. So we're really pleased to be part of this, Mike and John and everybody. And I'm looking forward to hearing the public's input, of course, as always. And then we'll have a lovely, wonderful end result. And then the next step will be implementation, and you'll be talking tonight about the next steps. So thank you all for allowing me to speak at the beginning of this public information meeting.
Thank you very much, Linda. Okay, with that, I'm going to probably stop my video because you don't need to see my face, and we'll move on to the actual presentation. I'm going to present for maybe about 30, 40 minutes real quick to try and get through as much of the information we want to share with everybody, and then we'll get to the Q&A part. Just quickly, the local advisory committee, which we've referenced, has been established with representatives from both the town and the village. And they've been working with the local municipal officials as well as our consulting team to try and shape this process as we go forward. And as supervisor pointed out, many local officials, as well as the advisory committee, which have been instrumental in putting this together and working on this over the past several months, as you'll see, to try and put this together, as well as the town and village board, who've been very helpful and supportive of this. So now that we've kind of introduced ourselves, I want to get an idea of, who's with us tonight on the other side of the screen, if you will. We kind of want to get an idea of where everybody's from. So I just want to sort of break the ice here with a little bit of a poll question. I'm going to share a poll with everybody. We'd like to know, where are you from? I'm going to go ahead and launch this right now, and like to get an idea of what sort of areas of the Cortland Buchanan area you are all from, or maybe you're from outside the area. And give everybody a few moments to fill out the poll. And as you'll see later in the follow-up meetings that we're going to have, those are going to be kind of more custom tailored to each of the little sub areas that we're going to be talking about tonight. And we're really hoping to get a sort of a flavor of how many people are interested in attending each of those. So we have an idea of how many breakout sessions to hold, because those are going to be held a little bit differently than tonight. Tonight's more of like an informational webinar. But we got, I think most of the folks have voted now. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now and share the results so everybody can see. We have, it looks like, most number of folks from Verplank at about 32%, and also a lot of folks from in town but outside these areas. So that's good. It shows that there's interest in the waterfront regardless of where you live. So thank you for that. So without further ado, getting onto it, my next question is, want to know how many folks know what an LWRP is or are familiar with it. Maybe you've, another poll here. How familiar are you with LWRPs? Have you never heard of it before? Or are you very familiar with it? Kind of want to get a sense of where people stand, because it's not usually common knowledge what these things are. So, okay. Okay, looks like we're just about getting close to having everybody voted by now. Leave it open for a couple more seconds. But it looks like I'll go ahead and share this with everybody. It looks like about a majority are somewhat familiar with them, or they've heard of them at least, but aren't necessarily sure what it's about. That's okay. No prior knowledge is necessary because we're going to kind of explain what it's all about very soon. So thanks for letting us know. So essentially, as you might know, the town of Cortland and the village of Buchanan have embarked on this joint community effort to try and develop a strategy or ways that we can improve the waterfront along the Hudson River, ways to improve our community. And the goal of this is to really identify ways we can revitalize or enhance the waterfront, not just for recreational opportunities and new parks and trails, but what are some economic growth opportunities, ways to protect the environment and the neighborhood character. As mentioned, the Department of State has been instrumental in this. They've awarded the town and the village with a grant to do this work. And it's important because the LWRP really acts as sort of a blueprint for future decision making on the waterfront, as far as what types of land uses should really be allowed, what would we like to see there, and the adoption of a formally accepted LWRP really opens up the door for both the town and the village to seek future grant funding to do some of the projects that we're going to talk about tonight. So in that sense, it's very important for the community to have that in place. And the reason why we're all here tonight is because an important part of that is getting community input. And while this was originally designed to be more of in-person workshops, we had to change our schedule and adapt to the COVID situation. And so that's why we've tried to create this more online persona and online interactive session where we can try and get input from the people. So some of our goals now are trying to improve public access to the river, developing some new parks and trails, or what opportunities are there for new parks and trails, as well as what are some opportunities for new economic development along the waterfront. For example, many waterfront communities have historically had industrial land along the waterfront, and some of those industrial lands might not be desired or appropriate really anymore. And what would people like to see there instead? How would they like to see these reused in the future? We also want to look at storm resiliency. How can we make our community more resilient to future flooding and storm damage so that we don't have to, we don't bear the burden of or cost of repairs as much? And also protecting water resources. The quality and quantity of our water is important to every community, not the least of which on a riverfront community. So those are some of the goals that are driving this project, and it involves issues of employment and tax base, or entertainment and tourism, and health and water recreation, which all sort of come together as part of creating a live, work, play community where our community isn't just one thing. It's got a diversified portfolio, if you will, of many things which help support it. And with that, my phone is going off with a reminder to do something with my son tonight. So I apologize. I thought I had muted that. Okay. So as part of that, we're trying to put together this community discussion. We've put together a series of websites and some online meetings where you can learn about this process and provide your input. Starting with the LWRP webpage, which we've developed for both the town and the village. This one right here is for the town of Cortland. You can see the address, if you don't know about it already, is townofcortland.com/LWRP. And the one for the village is very much the same. You have villageofbuchanan.com/LWRP. Both of these websites are essentially the same in content, so you can use whichever one you feel like, but they provide information such as project announcements, a map of the actual LWRP area, which I'll be reviewing with everybody in a moment, our expected project schedule, an example LWRP. I believe we have one from the city of Peekskill, just to give people an example if you wanted to take a look at what they're supposed to look like. There's also a comment form, a link to a comment form. So if at any time in the coming days or weeks, if you think of something you wanted to add or provide to us, feel free to use that link, submit any questions or comments. We share those with the team and the Waterfront Advisory Committee on a regular basis, so they're up to speed on some of the questions, so forth, coming through. And it has many other material there. So just to give folks an overview of where we are today in the sort of the schedule, this project started back in December of 2019. And then shortly afterwards, we appointed the Waterfront Advisory Committee, who we mentioned earlier. They've been instrumental in meeting with us on a regular basis to review some of the ideas and work that we've been developing and provide us guidance and steering on this project. Going into the early months of 2020, of course, we got hit by COVID and things got pushed out a little bit, but we used that opportunity to work on our inventory and analysis of the waterfront, and then followed up with meetings with the Waterfront Advisory Committee to review with them what we had found and some initial discussion ideas. And it was then decided that in lieu of the public meetings, which we were going to have at the time, we decided to utilize that time to host an online survey for a couple of months through the period of September, November. We had an online survey to try and get some initial ideas about what people might think and what might be their thoughts about the waterfront. I thank everybody who participated in that, and I can show you some of the early results of that, or some selected results. And then we followed that up with meeting with the Waterfront Advisory Committee to take the input we received from the online survey, as well as input from prior planning studies, the input from the advisory committee and the team, to try and put together some initial ideas and concepts. And for the purposes of sharing with the public, we've kind of tried to collect all of those onto a series of maps so that people can look at those maps. And we're going to show those to you in a little bit to try and sort of get some feedback from everybody. So that is why we are here right now. This public meeting right here is to sort of officially introduce the project to the public and outline how you can take a look at this material, with the idea being that we will have discussion group meetings in the following weeks. Starting next week, we'll have a series of online meetings similar to this, except not really in a webinar version, but more interactive with breakout groups, where we can discuss some of the ideas specific to each area of Ansville, Buchanan, Verplanck, Montrose, Krugers, etc. The idea being that the information that we gathered at each of these blue parts in the bar, here, here, and here, we're going to take that information and try and distill it into a draft plan or draft presentation, which we hope to share with the public later this spring. At that point, you'll have another opportunity to review and comment on it. And then later this year, a final presentation where we'll have again the opportunity to provide some input. So that's the overall schedule. We're trying to provide methods for people to stay abreast of what we're doing and provide input. And we're hoping that everybody has that in mind. So the discussion group meetings, which I've just mentioned, right now they are scheduled for once a week moving forward from today. Schedule is right now Ansville for Thursday, February 18th at 7 p.m. Followed the next week by the Village of Buchanan on Wednesday, February 24th. And then Verplanck on Thursday, March 4th. And then Montrose and Krugers on Thursday, March 11th. I want to point out that unlike this meeting, which was really a sort of an open invitation to the public, this was an open meeting. These 5 or 4 meetings which are coming up, those are going to require a Zoom registration. So I I'm hoping or asking that everybody who's interested in attending any of these to please go to our LWRP web pages, which I mentioned. There should be a link where you can click on to register for whichever meeting you want to attend. And that will give us an idea, if you can please register in advance, that'll give us an idea of how many people to expect at each meeting so we can plan accordingly. And as of recently, as of I think last week, we've just updated the LWRP web pages with the full survey results, which I mentioned, copies of the ideas and concept maps, which we're going to review with you, upcoming meeting info, and we're hoping to have a recording of this presentation so that if you or friends or family happen to miss it, then feel free to watch it again later on. I did get a question. If you don't live in any of these areas, you're still welcome to join us. And if perhaps you can't make the one for your particular area on that particular night, that's okay. We're not going to be super strict about that. We want to get feedback. So we encourage you to pick one that is most convenient to you, and we'll try and get it in as far as being able to discuss your ideas and concerns. In the end, it's all one waterfront, and it's all one giant community. So I don't want to, delineate everything by political boundaries as much as we can avoid. So everybody's welcome. We want to get as much input as we can. So as I mentioned, the Ansville, Buchanan, Verplanck, Montrose, Kruger's waterfront, this LWRP covers the whole list all the way from Bear Mountain Bridge down to Croton-on-Hudson, except for it does not include the city of Peekskill because they already have an LWRP, which was recently adopted, as well as the village of Croton-on-Hudson also has an LWRP. So we are the missing link to fill that in right now. Now, the official LWRP boundary, for the purposes of the official document and the Department of State, it has a limited boundary. And in that sense, it covers the waterfront as I described, but it also extends out halfway into the river, or 1,000 feet, depending on whichever's more. And, excuse me, and it extends inland to this blue line that you might see right here on your screen, this blue line which continues all the way down. Essentially, this blue line is bounded on the north end up by Ansville. It's bounded by everything west of Route 9. And then as we get down south of Peekskill, it's essentially bounded on everything west of Washington Street until you get down to Sassy Drive. And then it continues following along the line of the high power lines that cut right through this area. So everything between this blue line and the center of the river is within the LWRP boundary for the purposes of this discussion. So the questions, we're hoping to prompt people with are, what opportunity areas do you see? What sort of things would you like to see changed? What sort of things would you like to see not changed? For example, there's maybe many things about your community you don't want to mess with or change. What would you like to preserve? What types of land uses do you think might be more useful on the waterfront? As I mentioned before, maybe some industrial uses aren't as useful or desired on the waterfront. Maybe there's other more interesting or publicly accessible ways we can get down to the waterfront and enjoy it. Or what is your future vision for the waterfront? These are the types of questions we're hoping to get out of people. And we learned some of that from the online survey, which we shared. That was conducted between September 4th and November 16th. We received 600 responses. I was going to go through some of the highlights right now. But if you're really interested, the full results, including everybody's comments and written comments, are available on a link on either of the two LWRP web pages. So if you're interested, you can check those out. Before we start, I just want to get a quick idea of how many of you that are here with us tonight how many of you took the survey that was conducted last fall? I'm I'm guessing quite a number of you were, because many of you provided your email address at the end of that survey, which is what allowed us in many cases to reach out to you to let you know about tonight's meeting. So I appreciate that. It makes outreach much easier. And we're looking at about 80% of the folks have voted. And I'm going to go ahead and close that in just a few seconds. Give it a few more people some time here. And okay. And so it looks like a majority, 51% have said yes, they participated in the survey. So I thank you for that. It was very helpful, as you will see in the coming slides. 10% said they heard about it but didn't get a chance to. Unfortunately, 40% didn't even know about it. So on the good side of that, thank you. I'm glad that you were able to join us tonight. Toward the end of this presentation, I have a question where I want to ask folks what's the best way to get in touch with everybody as far as future outreach, so we can make sure we get better coverage in the future, and people don't know about, people don't miss out on these opportunities. So without further ado, here's some of the selected survey responses that we wanted to share because they really stood out to us. I don't want to go through all of them. I think we had 30 or 40 questions. But first question was, what would you like to see along the Hudson River waterfront in Cortland and Buchanan? And it was a multiple choice. The top answer, which stood out among all of the others with 522 responses, was river walk or walking paths along the river. So that was a highly demanded item. The next items coming in close second, thirds were waterfront picnic areas and cafe or restaurant near the waterfront with water views. So that shows a good amount of support for those uses. As far as improving connections to the river, we asked, what are some of your favorite destinations along the waterfront? The top three choices, all very close to each other, were Cortland Waterfront Park, Steamboat Dock, and other Verplank destinations, followed by the Peekskill Waterfront, and then Croton Landing, Croton Point Park, and other Croton-on-Hudson destinations. So that was also very helpful. And then waterfront redevelopment near Indian Point. There is some in the area of Lents Cove Park. There's some area north of the energy plant, which we believe is going to open up, if you will, in the not too distant future as the energy plant is wound down. And our question was asking, what sort of land uses would you like to see in those areas in the future? Public open space and passive recreation was one of the top responses. Restaurant, event space, and commercial. Entertainment was second, with perhaps cidery, brewery, and associated tasting room or tap room as third. So it was very useful to know what people are interested in seeing there. We have some recommendations or ideas to discuss about that later on in the presentation. This question was focused mostly on the Cortland Waterfront Park. The question being, do you think a waterfront discovery center would be an important addition to that park? Combination of 27 and 36% combined thought that over 50% felt that it was either important or very important addition to the waterfront, whereas 25% being neutral, 6% feeling it wasn't really, 6 and 7% saying not important or not important at all. So general support for that was good. And then also looking at some of the industrial lands along the waterfront that are either still in use or otherwise, should we take some of these underutilized or vacant industrial properties? What should we do with them? Should we continue to make them industrial, or should we try and promote them to be more mixed use commercial or water dependent recreation? For this question, overwhelming 80% felt that they would like to see those lands turned more to mixed use residential, commercial, and water dependent instead of being maintained as industrial manufacturing uses. So very, very strong opinion there. This question was, do you feel that there is a safe and convenient route to walk from, let's say, your neighborhood down to the Hudson River? And this one got a split response, which I think is good. 51% said yes, whereas almost 40% feel no, there isn't really, which I think this is a good response, because it shows us that this is something that we need to address in this plan, is creating better connections down to the water. It tells us that that's something that really needs some work. So I think, as you'll see, we've addressed some of that in some of our ideas later on. And this one, waterfront vision, I apologize that this graph is upside down, but I was technically unable to get my graphing software to show the highest response at the top for reasons I don't understand. But this question was an open-ended question where we asked people to write in, what would you like to see on the waterfront? So people were able to write in whatever they wanted. And then we had to go through and break apart the sentences and pick repeating words and count all the words and figure out what words were noticed the most or said the most. And at the bottom of this, you will see restaurants came in, where restaurants in particular was a word that was used the most often by itself, at least. The next three were some sort of recreation, either waterfront recreation or passive recreation or trail recreation were used quite often. Those came in, and then public access and amenities could all sort of be lumped into that as well. Then it's followed by active recreation, arts and culture, mixed use uses. So very, very useful information that we've gotten along here. And then at this point in the survey kind of split, where each respondent was asked to kind of follow the path of their own, where they lived, and break off and talk specifically about the portion of the waterfront that they identify with, be it Ansville or Verplanck. So each sub area was asked, what is your priority? What do you see the priorities for your area? And for Ansville, the priorities were continuing to develop the Riverwalk Greenway Trail, or connecting the Peekskill Trail to the Cortlandt Trail, and enhancing Ansville Creek for fishing, walking, and kayaking. Similarly for Buchanan, the top rated priorities were continuing to develop Riverwalk Greenway Trail along the waterfront, as well as better walking and biking connections from neighborhoods to the waterfront, and then waterfront restaurants, event spaces, recreation, entertainment uses. For Verplanck, the top priorities were better walking and biking connections from the neighborhoods to the waterfront parks again, having destination uses on the waterfront, such as restaurants and entertainment, restaurants or other water enhanced uses, and expanding beach access in some areas. And then for the Montrose Kruger's waterfront, some of the priorities there were, again, connecting the Riverwalk Greenway Trail at George's Island to Oscawana Island, connecting the Riverfront Greenway Trail in front of the VA hospital, which isn't really accessible right now, and other similar trail improvements at George's Island Park and Montrose State Forest. So this was very useful if anybody's interested in the full 30 or 40 questions that we had in the survey. I invite you, please check out the full survey results at either of the two LWRP web pages that we have. And we did collect some quotes from the surveys. Folks wrote in a lot of material into the survey, which we appreciate. A couple of quotes which stood out to us. One was, "I would like the riverfront to be what it once was, a beautiful and clean place for the community to gather and spend time outside." And also, a safe and inclusive space for all to enjoy recreation, appreciate nature, support the local economy, and learn history. A space that preserves natural features and wildlife while at the same time offering residents dining and recreational options. And I would not want anything that does not take advantage of the beauty and openness of the Hudson River. A chart house kind of restaurant would be very popular, I should think. So thank you to everyone that submitted on that. And based on this survey, as well as prior planning work, discussions with the advisory committee, and the analysis of the consulting team, we've tried to take all of these ideas and summarize them on a series of maps, which we can share with the public. So you have an opportunity to review them, take a look at them, see what you like, see what you don't like, and provide feedback to us either here at this meeting or in the following meetings. So we're going to have what we have are two types of maps. One focuses on really project ideas, which are generally tend to be physical improvements, if you will, for the most part. And then the other types of maps are land use concepts, which focus on different types of land uses. What types of zoning would you like to see allowed in this area? And these sort of act as a summary of the different ideas that we've heard from the survey, as well as many other inputs. So our goal is to kind of give an overview of what these are that we've collected over the last couple of months, and then kind of open it up to some discussion at this meeting and the following meetings to get some feedback. So as again, just to reiterate, these maps are available for you to review at any time on these two web pages. And I think at this point, I'm going to switch over to just looking at those in particular. And hopefully that worked. Hopefully everyone can see these this map that we have up here. This is our projects map. I'm going to zoom in to it in a moment, but this gives an overview. This is the whole waterfront from Bear Mountain Bridge down through Ansville, the Village, Verplanck, Montrose and Kruger's down to Croton-on-Hudson. There was too many ideas to fit on one map, so we've broken this down into a couple of different ones, and I'll just go through what they are here. I zoom in, and hopefully everyone can see this properly right there. So we're zooming in now. It's sort of the northern part of Ansville. One of the biggest ideas and suggestions that we heard from many people and carried over from the prior plans was the idea of a waterfront trail, which extended all the way down the coast. So we put that as one of our first items here as number one. You can see that that is a continuous dotted line which extends down the waterfront along Peekskill in front of Indian Point Energy Center, which might be more of a long-term goal, but then down and around all the way down to Croton-on-Hudson. So this would ideally create a continuous waterfront trail all the way up and down past the VA hospital, all the way to Croton-on-Hudson. And that was put in as number one because we heard a lot of people wanting to see something like that. Item number two right here, this is the idea to create an off-road connection, which would bring people from Roahook Road up to the Camp Smith Trail, just off the Bear Mountain Bridge Road. Project idea number three is this whole area from the roundabout at near Table 7 and the Paddle Sports Center up Route 9. This idea is looking at what improvements can be made along Route 9 as it winds up along Ansville Creek, including perhaps a road diet in this area to make room for future pedestrian and bike trails that would follow along the creek, and supporting some new uses along the water, which might be more water dependent, water enhanced, such as restaurants or tourism related activities. Area 4 here around the Cut, or the Cortland Colonial Restaurant, if you will. Here we're hoping to encourage redevelopment of vacant or underutilized parcels. So have some more water enhanced uses, such as restaurants with a view of the water, or similar tourism activities, perhaps to replace some of the former industrial or storage yard uses which are happening there right now. And then as we move down the waterway here, we get down toward the village of Buchanan. Here we have item number 5, which is this red line up and down Broadway from Lens Cove Park down to Verplanck. Item number 5 is the Broadway corridor, starting at Lens Cove Park, which we would like to strengthen really as a connection between the city, the village, and Verplanck, and enhance it as a nicer and more accessible corridor as part of the Riverwalk Greenway, with perhaps a shared use path. In the short term, since the Riverwalk Trail along the actually along the shore of the Hudson might not be feasible right in front of the Energy Center, this will act as hopefully a shorter term bypass to get around that until this can be implemented in a longer term. Number 6 are these connections here. As I mentioned, we heard from a number of people about the ability of getting from their neighborhood closer to the waterfront or to the waterfront. Looking at the village itself, here we were trying to propose some different connections, either from the village circle right here that would allow people to get up to Broadway and closer to the water, or from the elementary school up to Broadway, or from the circle, perhaps up Dickey Brook up to Lens Cove Park and Broadway here. Item number 7 is the quarry property, which is arguably underutilized right now and has a lot of potential. It's suggested that we wanted to get this area cleaned up and enhanced with perhaps some new infrastructure to support redevelopment here, with some safety improvements and access improvements, which would provide access into the quarry property without having to go through some of the quieter residential neighborhoods streets that are already here. If we could provide a new access to this property, which wouldn't disrupt those neighborhoods right now, that would be good. And the idea here is that future recreation related uses or other compatible uses could be developed here that would increase the public's access and enjoyment of the water. Item number 8 down here, the Waterfront Park, the Cortland Waterfront Park and Steamboat Dock. We're recommending the idea that these areas should be enhanced to include some additional water-related activities, such as the Discovery Center educational facility, which is mentioned. In Lake Meehaw, focus here should really be on continued efforts to clean this water and get rid of any invasive species that happen to be undermining the quality of the water right there. And then within the village center, right here, up and down this corridor here, we should continue to provide improvements, including the ongoing effort. The village has been working on a zoning overlay there and providing more residential options, as well as improving the streetscapes, sidewalks, and lighting to try and promote this area as a more pedestrian friendly and accessible area. We heard from many people, as I mentioned, about the connection from the different neighborhoods to the waterfront. And so a lot of the recommendations from this point forward are kind of related to that. For example, item number 11 here, this is really about the connection along Kings Ferry Road from the high school and elementary school down in Montrose down to the waterfront and to Verplanck. Likewise, item 13 here is trying to address the more upland areas farther away from the water. Because of the roadway system, these areas are in many ways cut off from the water. They're sort of separated by these barriers of the railroad tracks and the roadways. So the idea is to find ways to create improved bicycle and pedestrian connections, which would connect from Washington Street up here by Peterson's Pond and connect down through and over into the hamlet. Within the hamlet of Montrose, we're is recommended that developing design guidelines with business facade and pedestrian improvements to make this activity center more pedestrian friendly and accessible. And then along 14, many of these other items are including the suggestion to improve bicycle and pedestrian access from the hamlet down to the water. In particular, 14 along Montrose Point Road. 15 here, we have Sunset Road as sort of a bypass to connect these neighborhoods together. Along 16 Dutch Street down to George's Island Park from Route 9. And 17 from the Youth and Rec Center up here in Kruger's, down Kruger's Road to the waterfront. And item number 18 is including new bike and ped connections from Furnace Dock down to the water here. So that was sort of the projects map, looking at some of the land use maps. We'll do it sort of place by place. This gives you an overview of the whole area, but I'm going to zoom in, if you will, to the northern area here by Ansville. You'll see some of these areas have different colors, and you check by the legend. The colors really represent what is the existing land use right now. So some of the ideas moving forward for the Ansville area, starting with item 1. This is focused on the Mount Verde at Old Stone property. The idea here is to try and preserve this great historic estate, and while still allowing some flexibility for them to incorporate a mix of commercial or resort or residential uses in the future, to provide them some flexibility and creative ways to maintain this historic piece of property or this important community asset. Item number 2, this area includes the area of sort of commercial uses as well as municipal properties off of Roahook Road. The hope here is to try and support future uses, which can try and incorporate a green buffer area from the water and enhanced green infrastructure to reduce any potential pollution of the water, with the understanding that these uses probably aren't going to be relocated anytime soon. So in the short term, try and enhance the attractiveness of the area while protecting the water. Items number 3 and 4 work from the Paddle Sports Center roundabout at Table 7 area, and then up Roahook Road up along Route 9. This area, we're hoping this should be promoted as an important gateway into the town in Ansville. We'd like to see support for the reuse of underutilized properties along Roahook Road, with perhaps moving toward non-auto related commercial uses or non-contractor storage uses, and take better advantage of the economic opportunities of some tourism or restaurant water related activities along here. A potential solution is potentially looking at adopting something similar to the waterfront sustainability district zoning, which was originally or last proposed in the 2016 sustainability plan, I believe. And then moving on to the next map here, we're mostly focused on Buchanan and Verplanck. Again, I'll zoom in. And again, I might jump over some of these. I don't want to necessarily go into too much detail, but I encourage everyone to take a look at these PDFs on the websites and take a look at them yourself. See if you notice anything or you have any thoughts or comments about them. As we get into Buchanan and Verplanck, one of the key elements here we talked about earlier is this property adjacent to Indian Point Energy Center and adjacent to Lents Cove Park. As the Energy Center is brought offline over the next couple of years, some of these lands surrounding it are eventually going to be available for use. So this becomes a great opportunity for us. It's recommended that any new development here should provide some new public space and waterfront access as sort of an expansion of Lents Cove Park and the Hudson River Greenway Trail. any future development here we feel should be clustered to try and preserve that public access and some of the natural setting, but it could include a mix of commercial, mixed use, residential uses that would help provide an influx of new economic development and tax base for the community as the energy center is taken offline. Then number 6 here, the vacant parcels along Bleakley Avenue here between Bleakley Avenue and Dickey Brook. It's felt that future development here should be sensitive to the adjacent water resources, including Dickey Brook, and perhaps a vegetative buffer to help protect the water, which is also importantly a tidal habitat. So we want to be careful about development in here, making sure it's sensitive to the natural surroundings. This area here, 7, this is essentially the land owned by Con Edison. It's not likely that any of this use is going to open up in the near future, and the infrastructure here is going to remain. But little can be done with it, but we do want to sort of reiterate the project idea here that this is an opportunity to create some bike and pedestrian paths which connect the village up to Broadway and to other areas up there. Item number 8 again relates to the existing energy center. Some of this land, which is kind of outside the main core of the energy plant, some of this land is going to be able to open up in the not too distant future. And so there's an opportunity here to redevelop some of these uses to maybe move away from some of the heavy industrial uses and maybe be a lighter industrial use here with the idea that along Broadway, maybe it would transition more to a commercial uses, particularly along Broadway, to make this a more active and friendly pedestrian and bike and pedestrian area right here along the water or along the roadway, with perhaps some other uses hidden behind here. 10, jumping over to the village center around Buchanan Circle. It's recommended from a land use standpoint that zoning changes here would help to support a compact and walkable village center, perhaps considering a reduced front yard setback, an increased lot coverage maximum, and the incorporation of design guidelines, which the village has been working on as part of the zoning overlay. And number 11, along Route 9 right here, we have Buchanan Route 9. Along Route 9, we were hoping to encourage new businesses and residential development, which is attractive and pedestrian friendly. And then back again to the quarry site. Again, this is a very underutilized parcel. The town, we're hoping, should explore and analyze different opportunities for new commercial and recreational use of this property, which is a step away or a transition away from the current industrial zoning. So there's an opportunity here for some peripheral residential uses, which might make sense adjacent to the existing residential neighborhoods as sort of a transition from whatever happens in here to the existing residential areas. But with the idea that any development in really the core of the property should try and create a new access route from Broadway with some recreational and other opportunities inside the quarry site. The sort of lands right on the water south of the quarry, there's a number of industrial lands here. The marine and industrial parcels south of the quarry, this is kind of adjacent to a deep water channel, but we believe that the long-term use should kind of steer away from any heavy industrial uses and transition perhaps to more water-related and water-enhanced commercial uses. The idea here being that the town could collaborate with the landowners here to discuss the possibility of perhaps allowing some additional uses along here, which could expand their existing operations, such as the addition of a waterfront restaurant or hotel, or possibly some residential. We have the opportunity here to potentially do something similar to the waterfront sustainability district zoning, which I mentioned up near Ansville. Something similar to that might be appropriate here, depending on discussions with the landowners. Around Cortland Waterfront Park, it's recommended that the town pursue the recommendations of the Plank Waterfront Master Plan, including the potential for the Hudson River Discovery Center and educational opportunities here. And 16, very similar to 14, we have the potential here for expansion of uses, clean up some of this area and include some new uses, which might be also in line with the waterfront sustainability zoning, which I had mentioned for this area over here by Kings Marine, as well as up by Ansville. And moving on, our last map here. This is really focused on the Montrose Krugers area. I got to scroll down here. So item number 17 right here. This is the corridor along Route 9 in Montrose, where the town has been considering mechanisms to encourage some new business and residential development here, with the hope that any new business should really be, we would like it to be attractive and pedestrian friendly. And this is supporting their current effort. I believe the town is currently working on design guidelines for this area. So continued working in that direction is strongly, would be very much in line with the goals of the LWRP. Likewise, the town is already working in the process of developing a transit-oriented development district, or TOD district, around the train station. This is the idea behind that is trying to support mixed use, smart growth practices of more compact, walkable neighborhoods. And this ongoing effort, we wanted to reiterate here because it strongly aligns with the goals of the LWRP. And item 19, similarly along the Route 9 corridor through Krugers, there's a similar design here to try and encourage new business and residential development, which is both attractive and pedestrian friendly. And that's kind of summarizes our ideas for these maps that we've wanted to kind of coalesce all of these. As I mentioned, they're available for viewing on these two web pages. We're hoping if you wanted to take a closer look at them and think about them, we encourage you to take a look there. And we're going to be reviewing these ideas and maps in more detail at the upcoming online workshops, which I mentioned for each of the waterfront subareas. I'll list those dates again later on so that everyone can take a look. But you're free to review them in advance of the meetings if you want to take a closer look. So we want to know, what do you like or dislike, or what ideas, perhaps more importantly, do you think we've missed? I know we've got a couple of questions that have come in. I thank everyone for their patience. I try and get through this so we can get to the conversation part. So as I mentioned, the discussion group meetings, here is the schedule again. Ansville, February 18th, Village of Buchanan, Wednesday, February 24th, for Plank, March 4th, and Montrose and Krugers, March 11th. Again, reminder, these require Zoom registration, so please, if you can, sign up in advance. And one last question for everybody. Do you plan on attending any of these meetings? I'd like to get an idea of how many folks might be interested. And I promise they might be more exciting than this one, if that helps. Okay. Well, it looks like we got a pretty overwhelming support for yes. I wouldn't miss it. I do see a note here. Somebody, Michelle, had said that unfortunately they missed the beginning of the meeting and they wanted to know if this will be recorded. Yes, it is being recorded, and hopefully if I do everything correctly, we will have a copy of this presentation online at those web pages that I mentioned earlier. Should be online hopefully tomorrow, and you'll be able to check that out. And let's see where let's see, here we go. Oh, I'll end this poll and let's share the results. Majority of folks, 78% wouldn't miss it. 17 maybe, and small percentage says they can't make the scheduled one for my area. As I mentioned, if you can't make the one for your area, we're not gonna check your ID at the door. You can sneak into any of the other ones, and feel free to talk to us about those, whichever one is most convenient for you. And we'll try and make sure we get your voice heard. So these two web pages provide the copies of those maps I just reviewed, link to the full survey results, the comment form, as I mentioned, if you want to submit any comments, upcoming meeting date info, and copy of this presentation, but please register in advance. Smash that like and subscribe button, please. And so now I'm going to kind of open it up. I know a few folks were very interested in asking some questions. So I want to try and do folks have any questions about the big picture, the overall project, if you will? I want to try and get to that. I see if I just take a couple of questions to give folks an opportunity to speak, since I've been doing all the talking and my voice is going hoarse. I need to take a drink of water. James, I'm going to give you James Creighton. I believe I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk. So what do you have on your mind? You can go ahead and unmute yourself now.
Hey, Jorge, I'm not sure that I reached out to speak, but as one of the town council members, I'm just really love the work that the committee has done together. There's so many great ideas. I can't wait to push forward with so many of them, and I look forward to the specific area meetings so that we can talk specifics with everybody about each individual area.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to bounce back and forth between raised hands and so forth. Well, here it goes. Lots of raised hands. So somebody suggested they think a children's carousel and playground is a lovely destination for families. They have them all over in France in small towns, and they're lovely additions. That's a good comment. Thank you. Just going through some of the other questions right here. What revenue streams are planned to fund both development and perhaps more importantly, maintenance of these new items? That's a good question. I'm not sure I'm ready to answer that just now. That's a question I think our team will have to sort of pull a huddle on and figure about. We're hoping that some of a balance of new development and new economic opportunities with the redevelopment of some of these parcels will help create more of a revenue stream. And as I mentioned, the creation of this LWRP enables the town and the village to go after new funding opportunities from Department of State and other areas that hopefully will fund some of these projects. Let's see, what else do we have? Eric Puente, I believe you have raised your hand. I'm going to give you the opportunity to unmute your microphone now.
Great. Thanks. And just really appreciate all the work that's gone into this and the plan. One question that I have is, with the eventual decommissioning of Indian Point, is there an opportunity to look into the feasibility of maybe some sustainable energy to tie into the grid? Is that even feasible for, you know, the skills that we have and the land that's there? Something like set aside some number of acres for a mini solar farm that could tie into it and maybe generate some revenue and possibly create some jobs and protect part of the land from being developed, in addition to all the other things that you've shown us tonight.
Yeah, I think certainly this is an opportunity. There's no ideas necessarily off the table. So I'm certain we could have a discussion about that. Thank you.
Great.
Let's see, while we're waiting, I see one other person's raised their hands. Somebody, Rose, suggested, what about water recreation opportunities like swimming? That's a good thing. I don't know that we've covered that in particular here. That's something that we should talk about. Perhaps try and identify what areas would be most appropriate, either on the shore or further inland. What swimming opportunities do we feel are underutilized right now? I don't know who this person's name is, CP3705. I'm going to go ahead and take a chance on you and give you an opportunity to unmute yourself if you'd like to.
How you doing? I'm Chris Vargo. I live down in Steamboat Dock. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you. Yep.
Excellent, excellent. I have a problem with, first of all, I like Eric Fuente's idea about the sustainable energy. I really think that quarry property should be turned into a solar farm, not a mini solar farm, a big solar farm. That would bring a lot of revenue. The nicest thing about the town of Cortland and Verplank specifically is the taxes are reasonable and services are great. We're never gonna get the revenue stream we got from Indian Point. I understand that. But at least we bring some amount of revenue without any more infrastructure, without any more kids, without any more strain on the school system or anything else. So my other problem is I don't see nobody's taking advantage of the fact that we have this huge electrical infrastructure. EV, electric cars is the next revolution. I mean, it's on the news. I'm just a construction worker and I see it. I mean, GM's done. They're making electric cars another 10 years. Postal cars that turn electric. Now we have this huge electrical infrastructure and I don't hear anybody taking advantage of it. I heard of a server farm. That would be a huge revenue stream for the town of Portland. Verplank has 3 ways of getting into it. There's only 3 roads in the Verplank. You can't develop a big recreational department or area of Verplank with only 3 roads. Lake Miwa has maybe 20 parking spaces. And that's with the basketball courts already there and a rowing club, which is wonderful, don't get me wrong. But Verplank residential area, it's not Croton where you have where it's all riverfront, where it's divided by the railroad tracks. It's not Peekskill where you have the restaurants on one side of railroad tracks and the other side you have access to the river. I'm very concerned the way this is going. You're looking for Verplank completely the wrong way. It's a residential area. I'm a lifelong pointer, and I'm extremely concerned to how you're heading down the road here.
Okay.
I don't see how we can afford it. I don't see. You can hear it in my voice. I'm baffled the way you're going. I apologize. I appreciate all your work you do, but you really have to do a traffic study, and that's all. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. I understand. I hear you. That's why we have this session, so we can find out what people are thinking. Thank you very much. Looking at some, oh wow, there's a lot more questions than I realized here. Michelle had mentioned, unfortunately, I missed the beginning of the meeting. We already covered that as far as, yes, it will be recorded and hopefully put up on the web pages. Lisa asked, could lighting be included at Lake Mian? Lorraine says, what are you opting up to sign up for the meeting? I'm not sure I follow that question, Lorraine, but I do know we kept this one open. The following ones are sign up because we need to have an idea of how many people are going to be in each one, because we're going to do breakout rooms where we can keep smaller groups so we can have more of a conversation. So
Michael?
Yes.
Hi, this is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Kehoe. My understanding is we are meeting tomorrow morning to get the Zoom links live for the breakout sessions. Right now on the web page, it's just a placeholder for those sessions.
That
So there's no ability to sign up.
That's Lorraine's question. Now I understand it. Thank you for clarifying it. Yes, those links aren't live right now because we didn't want to confuse people and have them click the wrong link. So we're hoping tomorrow, or if I assume tomorrow, will be the earliest we could do it. Have those links up there so people can sign up. Thank you, Lorraine, for asking that question. I forgot to mention it, and thank you, Chris, for clarifying. Janelle says, just wanted to thank you to everyone involved in putting this together. This is very exciting and just what our town needs to move forward with the closing of Indian Point. All of the walking and biking paths to access the waterfront are a key that will draw many residents. Thank you. Paul also mentions, like Rose had, no mention of swimming. So I'm going to go back to a couple of more. I believe Maxim has asked to speak, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the ability to unmute yourself, I believe.
Yeah, hello, sorry. I'm a rower for the Cortland Community Rowing Association, and I just want to know, like, what are the plans for, do you know any plans for the boathouse or anything on the Verplank waterfront? That's about, like, all the questions I had for that.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I don't know of any particular other than I do know that the Verplank Waterfront Master Plan, as well as others, has suggested, one of the uses there would be between the Discovery Center would be also having some housing for the rowing crews and so forth there. I do know that that's been discussed. It's on our radar. It would be very much a water dependent use. So that's something that we're, I think, strongly advocating right now, at least.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks. And then Vanessa. Vanessa, I see your hand raised. I'm going to give you an opportunity to share your thoughts or questions.
Hi, Michael. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling in from Verplank, and I just wondered what the RFP process was for commercial opportunities. So I'm thinking more of Amazon and some of the warehousing opportunities that were available in New York City earlier that were declined.
I don't know the specifics of the RFP. Are you referring to a particular parcel in Verplank?
No, I'm just saying in general, when you have these opportunities identified, and I know we want to encourage some commercial opportunities, and I in particular would like to stay away from industrial.
Mm-hmm.
How do we target these parcels and have an RFP out for commercial opportunities for mixed use, residential or otherwise? And how do we find those people with an RFP to come in?
Okay, well, good question. Well, I think the first step, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Our first step is trying to come together as a community and figure out what do we want to have there first. I think we're still in the very early stages of figuring out what would be most appropriate. We've seen already, folks don't always agree on what would be the best or most appropriate uses. So we're trying to have this conversation and figure out what makes the most sense. I think that the next steps, once we've agreed, would be to work with the town and the village to modify the zoning where we agree it makes sense to open up to different types of uses. Once the zoning's been modified, then it may be up to the market to decide. That would be perhaps an incentive for different developers to come forward, depending on what's allowed. And hopefully in some cases we might have design requirements or design standards for some of these areas, which where we have some control of what they look like. And I think that's a little bit farther down the road. I don't think Cortland or Buchanan are going to be in a position where they're going to have to necessarily go out and beg people to come in. I think they're in a good position to capture some of the market, but we have to decide what market we want to come in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then well, let's take one or two more here. Kathleen says, sorry, they were just joining now. They wanted to say how wonderful it would be to have some of this waterfront developed. Love the rowing complex. Rowing is only available on the east side of the county, and so it's a great sport for school kids and adults. People will come from a long distance for this. Kathy notes, I hope these trails are wheelchair accessible. Packed or crushed material isn't always accessible. That's good to know. Thank you. And Dean has asked, will Metro North allow any access of their rail right away? That is a good question. That's something we've been discussing in-house as a team. There's a couple of places where we would like to have access to it, but we haven't reached out to them yet. Warren Smith, I see you've got your hand raised. I'm going to give you the opportunity to go ahead and talk.
Great. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say I wanted to commend you, your team, and the town board, and everyone that's involved in making this plan. And this seems like just yesterday we were doing this survey. I'm sure there was a lot of work that went into this just to get us to the survey point. And I'm really amazed at how much thought and how many great ideas you've come up with in this short period of time. It seems like only what, 2 months, 3 months since you've done this, since you did the survey. And I wanted to remind, all of everyone that's on the call, I'm sure they don't need reminding that this is really like step one. You guys have gotten us a step one now, and now it's time to talk and try and figure out, like you said, where we want to go with this thing. And I don't think there's any absolutes right now as to this is what has to go here at this point. We really want to get, I think your whole point is to get ideas and try and work things through and do what makes sense. Covering an area with any one thing at this point doesn't really seem like prudent at this time. So I just wanted to thank you for all your work, and I look forward to going to the workshops, and I hope everyone on the call will bring a couple of friends with them, and we'll all come up with some great ideas.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, back to some of the questions which are submitted. John Andros asked timeline on when any of the redevelopment work might be approved for implementation. That I have no idea. That's much farther down the road. At this point, we'd like to get this LWRP adopted this year. That would be followed or coincided with slightly with some zoning updates, but we won't know really what we're looking at in terms of zoning for a while. Thomas says, I second the idea of tying into the grid with some sustainable energy, especially tidal energy from the river. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. There are these electric transmission lines which are there. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. Is there some way we can take advantage of them? Margot suggests, what about ice skating? Have there been opportunities identified for that? Thomas says, has any consideration been given to ferries and waterway transportation? Thank you. That's has been something we discussed, although it didn't make our map, I think, due to an oversight. But our team has suggested water ferries or water taxis that would provide connection east-west across the Hudson River to some of the communities on the other side. Hopefully we're not necessarily taking the same approach of all the trouble they had to go through back in the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. I don't want to get my wars mixed up. Michelle says, I may have missed this, but has there been any discussion of connecting Croton Landing to the Verplank waterfront property? I don't know if maybe someone from my team can chime in on that. I don't know if particular offhand. Leslie says they appreciate the comment from the person earlier. I believe that was about taking advantage of the the power lines there with regards to the electrical grid and industrial, I guess, power related uses versus tourism related uses there. Kathy said, I agree with Chris about Verplank being residential. I believe that was perhaps the comment that Leslie was mentioning. And one person says they have concerns about traffic along Cortland Waterfront Park. There's safety during nighttime hours. Would like to see the small beach at Steamboat maintained as many enjoy it. Good point. Thank you. DBLG says, as stated by some of the individuals that spoke in the question and answer, how can this LWRP plan utilize the existing electrical infrastructure, the substation and power transmission lines that are in the Buchanan Verplank area to incorporate renewable energy options for some of the highlighted properties, such as a large solar farm using water in the quarry for energy generation, wind turbines, tidal water generators, etc. Thank you. And so I apologize, Mayor. I just saw that I've been looking at the attendees. I didn't realize you had your hand up. I'm going to give you the opportunity to unmute if you still wanted to say something.
Absolutely. Thank you. Can you hear me, Mike?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. It's been an interesting conversation. I'd like to thank you, your team, the town of Cortland, their team, and for allowing us to be part of this with the grant, and also all the committee members. You know, it's a lot of work. I see you've done a lot of work here, and this is a conversation we really need to start having. Not all of the Indian Point property will be available immediately, but there are parcels that could potentially within the next year or so be available. So this is something, you know, we've been talking about what we'd like to see there, what needs to be developed. And I do agree with Chris Vargo, we will never get that revenue from the property that we've enjoyed for all these years. It just is what it is. But you know, we have to do some smart development there. Not only does it affect our tax base, it also affects the school tax base. In speaking to the board members, we really aren't interested in industrial. Doesn't do for your tax base what you need to do. I think we all agree that we want to have riverfront access. That property there is such a beautiful piece of property right on the Hudson River. And years ago, way before my time, Nick Zachary, who always teases me, but there used to be a beautiful park there. There used to be a wonderful, beautiful park. And there was a boat that would, from the city, that would come up and people would get off to go to the park, to picnic, there was a huge swimming pool. So it was a beautiful piece of property. So we haven't been able to enjoy that property for so many years, and we'd like to have the opportunity again. But you know, it always depends too on who buys it and what the uses are. But I think it's very important that it's pointed out, whoever the new property owners are, that we have at least a river walk and to somehow cohabitate with whatever development is there, that also gives us the ability to have access for whether it's parkland or picnic areas or something like that. So it would have to be some type of an agreement with whoever the developers are that's allowed to happen. But I definitely would love to see a river walk through there that connects into Verplank and connects to also the Peekskill waterfront. I think people would really enjoy that and take advantage of that, because I see they do with the Peekskill walk there. And it's just, like I said, you're on the Hudson River. It's a beautiful piece of property. And so I just wanted to mention that. But as we look to develop the property, you know, we have to really look at mixed use, some residential. So it's got to be a combination of things, but we're trying not to be to look at the industrial part of it. So, but this is a really good start for us. And once again, thank you to all who are participating in this. It's a very good start. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And sorry, I didn't notice your hand or give you the opportunity to speak earlier. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Okay. Going back to some of the questions, the ferry service, Paul points out that Westchester County owns large portions of the property that are talked about as part of the plan, and that is correct. Hopefully the county will be able to, and I think they will be able to work with us on some of these elements. Aaron asks, is there any focus on restoring native habitats and plants as part of the landscapes of new business development? That's a good suggestion. I don't think that has been talked about specifically among our team, but I do know that if there are any elements of new zoning which might have the opportunity to include design standards as part of the new zoning, because I think we would all be very interested in having a say in what new development looks like along the waterfront. I think that would be an opportunity for us to include some requirements or standards, guidance on native plantings. Somebody also asked, is better lighting available for the recreation areas on the waterfront, along trails to the riverfront? It's a good suggestion, something we should take into mind. But we also want to keep in mind, we don't want to cause too much light pollution. So that's a balance we always have to find. I believe Kathy has suggested maybe White Beach, or I believe White Beach is what was suggested. Otherwise it is spelled Wild Beach. I'm not sure, Kathy, if you let me know if you've got a clarification on that. And then Dennis asked, will the VA hospital ask to be involved in the LWRP? We're going to go to them and hopefully make them involved, because we'd like, there's a couple of things that we would like their help on, notably the riverfront trail and restoring access to that so that the public will still be able to traverse from north to south, while still allowing them the security that they would like to have on their property. So we're not just letting people randomly into their property. I don't know if I believe I captured all the questions. If I haven't, let me know. Doesn't appear that anybody else has raised their hand. So let's give folks the opportunity for any more questions. But either way, I want to thank all of you for attending tonight. I actually feel a lot more comfortable giving presentations like this in front of a live audience of 200 or 300 people. So it's a little bit awkward doing it on screen, but we're all adjusting to this, I suppose. One thing I do want to ask while we're thinking about it is one more poll question, actually, is how did you hear about tonight's meeting? I'd be curious to know. I know a lot of people weren't aware of the survey. I'd be curious what was the most effective at reaching folks. Yes, Kathy says, I believe it was Kathy says, yes, White Beach was what Kathy was suggesting. And Leslie says a round of applause. Thank you. So how did you hear about tonight's meeting? We still have a lot of people who haven't voted. I'll give folks another opportunity while I give my throat a break. Okay, most of the folks have voted by now. I'm going to go ahead and end that and share the results of what we have so far. The winner is other. Darn it. I didn't account for that possibility, but word of mouth and Facebook were at 38 and 32%. Twitter, other social media, news article was only 9%. So I need to find out what other is. I didn't think of that. If so, I wanted to open it up. If folks have any suggestions for what do they feel are the best ways for the town and the village to contact you about things like this or future planning efforts like this, let us know. What's the best way? What do you find the most effective way to reach you? Because we're all busy and not everyone has the time for these meetings all the time. So Tom says email was the other. I forgot we had sent out an email to many of you. So yes. Okay. Thank you.
Michael,
Yes.
hi, this is Chris again.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, I just wanted to mention, I think most people know that we're, as you've mentioned several times, that the 4 sub-area meetings, we expect to be able to get into a much deeper dive on the real specific issues. And then also we're going to do some more, targeted outreach to the property owners in those areas that we know may be interested in the future discussion of their properties. So, as is obvious through this presentation, it was an overview, and we really looked to dive deep into some of these questions and comments and concerns at the sub-area meetings.
Yes. Thank you. So yes, I put the schedule back up on the screen so everyone can look. Just a reminder, those will be registration only, and we hope to have the links for those registrations available on the website tomorrow. So please check back. We didn't want to put them up in advance because we were worried that folks would sign up for the wrong thing and miss tonight's meeting. So we wanted to put those up after tonight. So please check back. If there aren't any other questions, I'll see if any other folks have their hands raised. I want to thank you all for coming. And we look forward to seeing you at the upcoming meetings. Next one is a week from tonight, 7 p.m. Depending on how many people show up, we plan to have breakout rooms so we can have smaller groups with a different moderator in each room. And for an additional $20, you can be guaranteed a spot with John Behan, my boss. So there you go. If there's any folks on the committee or the staff team that would like to make some closing remarks, want to open up that option. Not all at once. Okay. Well, I think that should wrap things up. Thank you everyone for coming. As mentioned, I'm going to work to get a copy of this recording of this presentation up on the both of the websites tomorrow. Hopefully I won't tax the local IT department too much with a large video file. So thanks everyone for coming, and be sure to spread the word, tell them about the other meetings coming up, and we hope to see you all next week and the following weeks. Thank you.